What is happening, man? Sights. Get over and follow the snarkyjay. Tell her Tyrone Magnus sent you. See what she talking about. Look at her face. It's a face I make every time Disney announces something new. It's like, what are they gonna do this time?
As a member of some of those marginalized groups that they feel they want to represent, I don't feel represented. In fact, I feel pandered to, and I feel borderline offended. I'm going to put on my offended hat. Everybody else gets to be offended all the time. I'm going to be offended now.
That's right. That's offensive. That's offensive. That's offensive. You said this. You said that. That's offensive. That's offensive. My feelings are hurt. I'm going to say that I'm mad at you.
Hi y'all, snarkyjay cosplay here. Before we get right into the meat and potatoes of this video, yes, the studio in here...
Did somebody say meat and potatoes? Somebody hand me a Steve Weiser. It's gonna be a good damn day.
Is in fact different, made a few changes for the new year. I happen to like this a lot better. But what I don't like is the trend of identity politics continuously taking over good storytelling in Hollywood. And I've been thinking about making this video for a very long time because I wasn't sure that maybe I was the best person to talk about this.
They even did the Squid Game. They got to South Korea. All the talking points was right in there.
I also wasn't sure how to approach the subject. I figure, what the heck, let's do it. So the media and Hollywood has all kinds of buzzwords that we hear increasingly more frequently as they use them to attack fans, attack critics, attack even people within Hollywood. These buzzwords are everywhere. But one of the main buzzwords that I've been hearing more and more over the past, I would say 8 to 10 years, is representation. Representation could mean anything.
Before she even rolls into this, we have all been represented for quite a few decades. And with them saying representation, what they mean now is forced representation into areas that they just want to, like, I don't know, put everything on a ball and go like this. That's what I feel like. They just want to stir everything up when it's like, okay, so I don't understand because, I don't know, so you're doing trying to think of something. I don't know. You're going to go and you're going to do a story about young Mr. Miyagi. All right. Young Mr. Miyagi in Okinawa. For some reason, somehow, you're going to have to fit every race of the planet in his town doing something, when at that time, when he grew up as a little boy, you didn't see hardly nobody of different races, but you've got to find a way to do it. And because if you've ever read the chart for ESG, DEI, you already know what they have to put in there. Who needs to be in positions of power? And you got to check all these different boxes. And it's just like, can I just see a story about young Mr. Miyagi on Okinawa with his Okinawan people? Is that okay? It's so irritating because you know that they're forcing us into situations where everybody might not exactly be. And that's every color and both genders. You know what I'm saying? It's weird how they're doing it now.
A number of things, but what it's come to mean in Hollywood is essentially casting people of certain races, ethnicities, sometimes gender identities, sexual orientations. Typically, representation is all about checking boxes, so to speak, and it's also about checking boxes in a very ham-fisted sort of way, and I really want to break that down and break down why I think that sort of representation is almost damaging to the people it's meant to serve. And I also want to get into the fact that I also think representation in some senses is kind of bullshit. And I know that that's kind of a hot take, but...
Yeah, most races hang with each other. So when you watch something and you're forcing quote unquote representation because you want it to be more authentic to the world we live in, well, the world we live in is just like that. Most races hang with each other. We do know that other races are there, okay? But it's just there's certain situations where you're pushing this authenticity of the situation. When I'm looking at a group of black men, young black men growing up somewhere, it's always got to be somewhere in the city, something like that. It's like now they got to stop by and they got to pick up their white friend, their Arab friend, their Indian friend, their Chinese friend. Let me see, the gay girl that's tough, that can hang with the boys. It's like that doesn't really happen. It just doesn't on the norm really happen. Tell you the truth, I've never ever been in a situation in my life where we were all going to the club or going somewhere and we stopped to pick up the white guy, the Chinese guy, the Arab guy, the Indian guy, the gay girl, the straight girl. It's so forced. It's just like, oh my God. It's like making a black person dance in a movie. It's like, oh, good Lord. Yes, a lot of us are good at dancing, but you just have to, just because the scenario exists doesn't mean that you have to put every stereotype or everything in there. It's weird.
Hear me out on this one. And so I can present my argument without being flamed on the internet, I would like to show you guys my identity politics card. So I am Cuban Puerto Rican. I'm bilingual. I speak more Spanish
she got black in her. What's happening, sister?
Than English and at home, and have since I was little. My father and grandparents are immigrants.
Hola.
And I'm also a woman, so those are at least like 2 or 3 marginalized groups that I fit into. Mm-hmm. And so for those reasons, I feel just a little bit qualified to make these statements I'm about to make.
Oh, so you're a lot of it qualified.
When it comes to representation, as I mentioned, it's typically about race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, orientation, that kind of stuff. We keep seeing trends of characters of other races essentially being race bent into more marginalized groups. We see male heroes replaced by female equivalent.
It is funny because I look more at Jason Momoa as him being the dude bro white guy, but he's not. He's Samoan, correct? So that but he's racially ambiguous, similar to The Rock or Vin Diesel, and that's good for Hollywood because they can fit them into certain positions where it's like, yeah, I can see him. You know what I mean?
And quite frequently, people go back to the lore and pull out one page from a comic 40 years ago that nobody read and said, look, see, so-and-so was actually this race.
Yep.
For one single issue. Yep. Don't you feel stupid?
So to push our agenda, we're going to use only that version, not the most popular version of that character that all the fans want to see.
No, I don't feel
Oh, and if you don't like it, you're racist, and you're misogynist, and you're homophobic, and you're transphobic, and you're a bigot, and this isn't made for you. And then if you don't buy it, then we're going to be mad at you because you didn't buy it. But we just got done cussing you out, calling you every word in the book, but you're still supposed to turn around and love us and buy our product.
Stupid, because you actually just bought into Hollywood's identity politics. It's all a manipulation strategy. And if they were good at this manipulation, then I would actually feel okay about it, right? If they made, for instance, a Wonder Woman that was Hispanic/Latina, instead of that typically Greek-coded origin, essentially the way Hollywood looks at it is like, look, we cast a Latina, we're all good. And so essentially they think that they have bought the asses of Latinos and Hispanics, and we're all just going to flock to the theater because they happen to make a superhero Hispanic or Latino, whatever.
Here's the problem, big companies. We know why you did it. You did it for money because you thought it was going to work that way. When in reality, the most of us feel it's stupid and that you're pandering and that you're tokenizing us. We don't like it. Stop. And stop giving us all the black people in video games the comb over Killmonger. The Killmonger comb over. We're tired of it.
Maybe I would feel a little more represented, but the fact of the matter is that anytime Hollywood has to sell you identity politics that hard, they also swing in a borderline racist direction. You have people essentially using representation to almost write out like the worst possible stereotypes. I want to go ahead and acknowledge perhaps one of the most egregious recent examples of this. When I went to watch Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, America Chavez's character literally repeats almost everything she says in Spanish after she said it in English, just to remind us that she's a strong Latina. I have spoken Spanish for most of my life at home, and I've never gone into the street and repeated myself in Spanish. I mean, there's a scene where she literally says, "My mom's son mis madres." I'm sorry, is that like a legal Hollywood requirement for people that speak Spanish and are of Latin/Hispanic descent? Should I forget how to speak English and repeat myself in multiple languages? It comes across super fucking forced because 90% of the time it's actually not even written by the people for the people. It's not like you have real Hispanics/Latinos writing any of this in the studio. You essentially have white people with white guilt writing stuff and going, is this okay?
Remember in Transformers, the Spanish dude that was talking about his mom cooking alligator and all that other stuff? And Tyrese says, I swear to God, I'm never coming to your house for dinner, man. Okay. He does something stereotypical. You see a lot of Spanish people speak Spanish to people that don't speak Spanish in movies. But they don't do that in real life. If you're talking to a Spanish person and they know that you speak English, they don't use Spanish. The only time I've noticed that, I got several, I have an extended surrogate Puerto Rican family before Scarlett. That's how I met her, through them. Every once in a while they'll tell a story and they might be, saying, yeah, I was in Puerto Rico and we went by this place and they had this food, they call it, and then they'll say it, or we were all eating, and they might even explain what it is. They'll say, we were eating this. And I'll be like, what's that? That's this. Or they'll do it themselves. You know what I'm saying? Like that. But it's not this whole in between English to Spanish, English to Spanish. Now, from what I understand, they do that amongst each other sometimes, this whole Spanglish thing, because they know English and Spanish, and they'll kind of mix it. I was watching Love is Blind Habibi, and the Arab folks were doing that. They were mixing English and Arabic back and forth. And they kept doing it throughout the whole show. It was like throwing me off. I'd never seen anybody really do that.
Honestly, just give me whatever the superhero was before. And if she happens to be Hispanic, just let me know that she's Hispanic. I don't need her repeating herself in 2 languages every f***ing time.
Exactly.
It's not necessary.
Stupid.
So to what extent, they actually execute all of these racial ideas pretty f***ing poorly. But then on top of that, they essentially don't give a shit enough about the races and the gender identities and whatever that they want to represent, because half the time they don't pull an ethnicity out of a hat and go, yes, this ethnicity needs representation right now, so I am going to craft such a well-written, beautiful fucking character reflective of the heritage and this culture, and they will also fit perfectly into the storyline. It's going to be great. No, they'll take a pre-existing character and then change their name, like the whole Bob the Builder thing. I did a whole video on that. They're changing Bob the Builder to Roberto the Builder. Roberto the Builder, who's from Puerto Rico, and is going to build the best buildings that have ever been built. Get the fuck out of here! Give me Bob the Builder!
You almost said that like Antonio Banderas. I am Bob the Builder, and I will make the best building ever. I am the Pussy Gato. Are they really changing Bob the Builder? Oh my God.
Or write somebody else! You know who exists? Handy fucking Manny. Handy fucking Manny was the Hispanic Bob the Builder, and everybody loved Handy Manny. Nobody looked at Handy Manny and was like, you
Never
know
heard
what?
of him, but,
I wish you were Roberto. I really wish you were Roberto. Nobody's ever fucking asked that. So not only do they do it poorly, but then when they do it, they're also just doing ham-fisted gender, race, whatever swaps to appease the masses. And by the masses, I mean a very vocal minority that just throws tantrums over everything at any given time. But that's none of my business. Anyway, so Hollywood tends to shove representation down our throats and is also really fucking bad at it. Because as a member of some of those marginalized groups that they feel they want to represent, I don't feel represented. In fact, I feel pandered to, and I feel borderline offended. I'm gonna put on my offended hat. Everybody else gets to be offended all the time. I'm gonna be offended now.
Hear that? Hear that, movie studios? Hear that, game studios? Hear that? We speak for millions upon millions who have not been buying your stuff. This is the year of the wallet. People are boycotting, and they are just not buying what you're selling. Listen.
But the other thing that I want to talk about is that I also think that reducing representation to these labels also really cheapens the human experience. If I were to ask you, the viewer, to tell me about yourself, would the first traits out of your mouth be your race, your gender, your age, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, and where your parents and grandparents came from? I don't think so, because as human beings, we're a lot deeper than that. We are so much more than what's between our legs or where we came from. We're a lot more complex than that. And so by reducing people down to these labels, not only does Hollywood create more division, but they also essentially forego good storytelling because they're too focused on ticking boxes. I have been blessed or burdened with an incredibly obsessive personality since I was a kid. Every character that's ever been a favorite character.
Hear that, fellas? Watch out. Woo!
I've been completely in love with. I've collected action figures and posters and stuffed animals and merch, and I've gone on the Tumblr train when I was like 13 and 14. I'm very into all these things. I've also been cosplaying for 9 years now, and I would tell you that at the beginning especially, but still to this day, a lot of the characters that I cosplay are men, and that's not because I'm confused. I think it only takes one look at me to know that I'm very comfortable with being a woman, but it's because these are characters that I identify with.
Yeah.
I have spent my entire life identifying with characters, seeing bits and pieces of myself in these characters and vice versa, and therefore that sparks my love and respect and dedication
They're all damn good,
to these
Snarky.
intellectual properties. And I will give you a few examples. Batman/Bruce Wayne, with his dedication to serving his city, the guy has a drive because he has a mission. That's something that I've always identified with. A character like Eric Draven from The Crow, he wants justice for the people that he loves.
Yeah.
That's something I've always identified with, seeking justice and protecting the people that I care about. I could literally do this all day, just picking characters that have nothing to do with me, that I saw something of myself in, that I identified with them in, that I felt represented by them. None of them...
They didn't need to be a Latina for her to identify with them, because we can identify with one thing with the character and like them. Did you know that? Did you know that? And you don't have to change the character to our identity to make us like them. Because if we didn't like them in the first place, we're not going to like them because you changed them to be more like us. It's not going to work. I'm trying to think of what there's like a character that I don't like in comics. I'm trying to think. Okay, I'm not in particular, Guy Gardner is okay with me, but I'm not in particular a fan of his old school, the bowl haircut look, right? Some people that like it, some people don't, right? I'm not, say, a fan of that, right? You making Guy Gardner black is going to make me like him. Because I still don't really care about Guy Gardner. Like I say, he's okay. He's meh for me. Okay? There you go. Oh God! Like they think if they just change someone black, all of a sudden we'll come to the theater. But well, it's a Guy Gardner movie. Oh, he's black now. Why?
have anything in common with me or my life, and yet Despite the fact that they aren't young Hispanic women, I saw myself in them. Because I, as an individual, as a living, breathing human being, am far more than just the immigration status of my parents or the box on government.
Oh, here's a good one. I never cared about the Green Goblin. I never liked the Green Goblin. I don't hate him, but I never liked him. You know, I kind of like his portrayal in the Sam Raimi movies, but I don't like him. I don't. I think his costume's stupid. I don't like him. You changing him black doesn't make me say, oh, my, well, what's the Green Goblin? Oh, look.
Forms that I have to tick proving that I am Hispanic, Cuban, Puerto Rican, whatever. I am not a set of boxes to be checked. And neither are you, and neither is anybody else.
That's right,
so
sister.
I say objectively that representation has never mattered to me. I don't know. I don't like to use the word never, but I can also tell you that it has had very little influence on how represented or connected I feel to a piece of intellectual property, to a character, what have you. Again, this is just my experience. This is just my perspective. I know so many people were really...
Oh, your perspective is the same as millions upon millions.
Happy with Black Panther, and they felt represented by that character. I know that a lot of my own people, Hispanics and Latinos, were really f***ing pissed off when I trashed Blue Beetle, because I thought it was a terrible movie, and I honestly felt stereotyped and offended. And
yeah, you're not supposed to like it just because it's your people in it. We don't have to like every single thing that our people do. We don't. Okay? I mean, when was that a crime? When was that a problem? I can't think of any race that supports every single thing that their other people in their races do. And then if you don't, oh, now you bring in a black man down. Now you're not supporting your Latino people. That is some of the stupidest rhetoric I've ever heard.
They felt represented by it. So at the end of the day, my opinion on this matter is not a singular one. It's not a message to Hollywood that they're doing it all wrong, but this is how I feel. I tick more than a few boxes on the identity politics sort of checklist, but I can tell you right now that I've never felt more connected to characters or more represented than when the character really looked nothing like me. And that's what I think Hollywood is missing, is they spend so much time trying to tick these boxes and essentially cast people.
Yeah, the Hulk is green. You know how many guys identify with that? Being able to just snap, level a building or a city, getting all your anger out, and then shrinking back. That's why so many people love the Hulk, because everybody wants to freak out and rampage at least once. That's why people like it. He does something that we can't do in our civilized society without being jailed, killed, or imprisoned. Okay? Or you have to see a therapist. But Bruce Banner can do it. So, yeah.
People or write characters
Make the Hulk black
are going to fulfill people in this really general, sort of gross sense of labeling, as opposed to writing people that we can see ourselves in. I don't feel the need to see myself on the big screen in a literal way. I don't need some tan, curvy brunette that happens to be Cuban, Puerto Rican, and definitely knows what a good, fresh...
I saw what you did there. She said, I don't need a tan, curvy Puerto Rican. So what you did there, snarky one. A little bit of self-advertising there.
Cubano smells like. I don't need to see that. But I want to be able to look inward on a character and see that and feel connected to them. That, to me, is representation. I feel like if we put the textbook of identity politics down for a little while in Hollywood and instead focus on telling better stories, I think we might find a lot of benefit. People might feel less pandered to. People might make less claims about identity politics.
Just go back to doing what you were doing.
We might start to see box office numbers go all the way back up if we collectively focused on storytelling and characters as opposed to just making sure that some boxes are ticked.
Disney, Marvel, you were already doing fine. You were already doing fine. You had a winning formula that made you the biggest franchise of all time, correct? if not that the second, you are already doing great. What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?
I think making an effort to not check boxes is just as big a problem as checking boxes. So I'm not saying we don't need representation. I think it's important to have it.
Just needs to be organic. That's it. You force it. Forcing isn't organic. Okay?
In mind, but I also don't think it's the be-all, end-all, especially not when it comes to entertainment. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a young Hispanic female daughter of immigrants born right after the millennial timeline, so maybe I feel like these Hollywood execs are talking at me a little too much and not to me. And that's all from me. I've been snarkyjay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more snarkyjay, be sure to check me out on Instagram, and if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I'll add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know your thoughts on representation in Hollywood in the comments below.
Told you Snarky knew what she was talking about. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you all think. If you enjoyed my thoughts and reaction on this, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. 10 million subscribers. Woo! All this damn forced stuff don't make no damn sense. Trying too hard. You're trying too hard to be liked, Hollywood.